watching CNN on this busy Friday afternoon. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Let's jump right into it. Any moment now, the president will be standing behind that podium there at the Rose Garden at the White House with the news the nation has been waiting for, has been demanding for the last 35 days. Two sources tell CNN a deal to end the shutdown is near, but it does not resolve the border wall conflict. It just forces it to come to a head in 3 weeks' time. That's how long a proposed continuing resolution or CR would last, giving more time for a permanent deal to be hashed out. And really, one of the key questions is, well, what changed the president's mind? A White House official admits today's major delays at airports from staffing shortages caused by the shutdown did play a key role. So let's start there at the White House with our correspondent, Caitlin Collins. And so what's in the deal, Caitlin?
Well, basically, Brooke, what we're expecting the president to come out here and announce is that he is going to endorse this deal that would reopen the government just for 3 weeks. Therefore, it would pave the way for all of those agencies that have been closed for over a month now to reopen. And those 800,000 federal workers who have been working without pay or furloughed and sent home will be having money back in their paychecks. But of course, Brooke, that only goes for 3 weeks. This is a temporary deal. They want to essentially reopen the government and then debate the president's border funding demand with Democrats and other lawmakers for the next 3 weeks. But the White House's condition here is that if the president does endorse this deal, he does agree to sign on to this, and then the government is open for 3 weeks while they're negotiating over what the spending would be. If they do not come to an agreement that the president likes at the end of those 3 weeks, that's when the president says he'll invoke a national emergency to build his border wall and therefore bypass Congress. Now, this is what we're expecting the president to say, but we do have to caution that nothing here is final until President Trump himself has the words come out of his mouth. So that's what we'll be watching for. But Brooke, the takeaway from this, if what we've been reporting, that's what the president is going to announce here in the Rose Garden, that he will temporarily reopen the government while they then debate border security funding. It's going to be seen as a cave to Democrats, because that's what you've heard Democrats say repeatedly for the last several weeks. Open up the government and then we'll talk about border funding. Now, that's not just because the Democrats have been making that demand that the president is going to relent to that, as we've been expecting here today based on what we're reporting. It's also because of, as you just noted, the air traffic control problems, the effects of this shutdown that have rippled across the country and have become a very real problem for this White House, something they noticed not only today, the second paycheck day, that those federal workers are not going to be receiving a paycheck. It's all of the effects of that coming together and building, mounting pressure on this White House essentially to now. That is why they feel they've got to endorse this 3-week agreement, reopen the government, then debate border security funding. But Brooke, we very well could be right where we are now at the end of these 3 weeks if the president and Democrats don't come to an agreement. Okay,
Caitlin, thank you. We'll stand by for hopefully some sort of deal to be struck in a minute when we see the president there at the Rose Garden. But I have a couple more follow-up questions on what really is in the deal. And for that, I want to go to Phil Mattingly, our CNN congressional correspondent up on Capitol Hill. And Phil, Caitlin ran through some of the guts of the bill. One of my questions, if we may get into the weeds a little bit, this is Dana Bash's reporting, reopening the government for 3 weeks. And she says, in a vehicle to go to conference on the DHS bill, no wall money, Senate would vote first. But on the conference of the DHS bill, what does that mean?
Dana Bash knows her stuff. It's good reporting right there. No, so Dana's right. And basically what this will do, so you almost need to separate the two of them out, right? There will be a 3-week continuing resolution, a 3-week reopening of the government of the 25% that's shuttered. And they will also agree that the House will vote on a motion to go to conference on the funding bills for the Department of Homeland Security. And Brooke, as you know well, the Department of Homeland Security funding bill has been at the crux of this entire fight. If you're going to get wall money, it would come in this bill. If you care about border security and border security money, it is based in this bill. Now, the House and the Senate both have their own versions of these bills that need to essentially be married together at some point. That is what they're going to set up. They're going to set up that process, allowing lawmakers on the relevant committees to start a conference process to try and work out an agreement and that everybody agrees with and can pass both the House and the Senate on these bills. Now, the key issue here is that this doesn't in any way solve the wall funding problem that the president wants, and Democrats have made clear that even if they go into negotiations with the president, they are not willing to accept wall funding. At least that's what Democratic leaders have said. So to Caitlin's point, the idea that by the end of 3 weeks, there's all of a sudden going to be a Department of Homeland Security funding bill that has $5.7 billion for wall funding, I think is pretty far-fetched at this point, particularly because Democrats control the House. But that's the structure of how it's set up, and what this will essentially launch is, one, reopens the government for 3 weeks, and two, starts this process of negotiations. And Brooke, you know well, this has actually been Senator Lindsey Graham's idea for weeks now, one that the president has rejected out of hand multiple times. Democrats in the Senate have said this is the best course of action, the best way to go. They wanted to do this. So now they'll have to essentially put their money where their mouth is and see if they can reach an agreement on this bill that the president finds amenable. I think the broader picture here is, if they don't reach an agreement on this bill, what happens? And Caitlin reported, and it's the same thing I'm hearing, that the president will say he will declare a national emergency. And then what? You still have to fund the government at the end of 3 weeks. And how is that process going to work? What will be the structure of that process if they don't reach an agreement on the Homeland Security bills is still an open question right now. But I think for everybody's purposes, as far as I know right now on Capitol Hill, the idea of just getting the government over is a momentary exhale. And again, to Caitlin's cautionary tale, wait to see what the president actually says. That's what I've been repeatedly told by Republicans who have been informed. I will tell you, sources tell me that the White House has told Republicans on Capitol Hill the president will sign off and endorse this deal. Even those same Republicans say, just wait. Just wait. We've been through this before. Wait and see what he has to say. But that's essentially how this will all work over the next 3 weeks.
Okay. I have a follow-up for you on disaster funding, but I'm gonna slow my own roll and wait to hear from the President of the United States myself. Thank you very much, Phil Mattingly. Let's have a bigger conversation about what we are about to hear from Trump there at the Rose Garden. With me now, CNN political director David Chalian, and also senior political reporter Malika Henderson. So, how about David? When the president comes out, presumably he will be the one to get to say, I'm opening the government, you know, you're welcome. But is this the president caving to Democrats?
Well, if it is as what Dan is reporting and what Phil just was walking us through describe, I don't know how that can be seen by anyone in their right mind as not caving. The president has said repeatedly over these last 35 days he will not open the government unless there's wall funding to get the government open. If it's true that there is going to be no wall funding in this continuing resolution to open the government for 3 weeks, Brooke, then he is completely caving on why. So that's what I'm listening for, is how is the president now going to explain to the nation why he has shut down the government for 35 days, caused real pain to federal employees, the support structures around them. We saw what
you
was
think he's going to explain that?
Well, I'm just saying, how does he explain why he did that when what he was looking for is not included? A. The other thing I'm going to be listening for, B, is what Ann Coulter and Laura Ingraham and others in the conservative right-wing echo chamber have to say about the president taking this move, because that's precisely what drew him back from. He was in this position in December, and he walked away from it. So we got to keep our ears open for what that right-wing echo chamber says when they hear the president reopen the government without money for the wall.
Nia, what are you going to be listening for?
No, I think that's right. I'll be listening for the things that David is talking about there, but also the president's demeanor here as well. I mean, this really is a time when he is likely to come out, and as David sort of predicted and all the reporting suggests, this would be a cave. This would mean that Nancy Pelosi and those Democrats stood firm while he didn't. Remember, this was a president who said that this could go on for a while, right? He said that just a couple of days ago. And previously, he said this is something that could go on weeks, months, or even years, right? And so now here he is. It looks like he's about to accept this deal or talk about this deal that had been talked about beforehand from Lindsey Graham, all sorts of deals that he's rejected. So I think it'll be interesting to see the demeanor here. It's also interesting the sort of staging of this. I'm curious as to why they even staged it in this way, because this is in the Rose Garden. This, the idea that he's going to come out, the idea that this is some, kind of celebratory moment for this president and this administration, it certainly isn't the case. This is a shutdown that he singularly caused. This is a shutdown that he called for, and here he is now, we expect, basically saying that this is going to be something that's going to be reversed at least for 3 weeks, and what the way forward is on this wall, we'll have to see. It looks like we're setting ourselves up for 3 weeks down the road for where we are right now, which is the president saying that he wants a wall and Democrats essentially saying no wall.
And on that point, Brooke, that Nia just mentioned about 3 weeks from now, I don't know if the president's going to take questions or not from reporters when he's out there, but it seems one of the immediate questions that the president is going to have to answer is, so what if on February 15th, when that money would run out, if they have not come to terms on wall money, and again, Democrats are refusing to appropriate any money for a wall, is he willing to shut down the government again? On February 15th. It seems to me that's going to be something he's going to have to answer because he's keenly aware. I mean, we just got a new poll from the ABC Washington Post poll that came out today. He is keenly aware. It shows what every other poll has shown. His approval ratings are down. He has taken a hit because of his position on this shutdown.
But I thought part of the Dana reporting is if they come to still an impasse in 3 weeks, then therein lies the national emergency.
And maybe that's what he'll put forth today. Maybe he'll explain that.
A lot of maybes. We're waiting to see the man himself. We have to take a quick commercial break here as everyone's waiting with bated breath that this whole government shutdown, day 35, ends. We wait for the president to speak to the world after this. All right, so we're back. We're still waiting to hear from the president of the United States, presumably announcing that he has struck a deal with Democrats. At least that is what I can now report to you from our own CNN reporting, that the president and Democrats have reached a tentative deal to reopen the government and his cabinet already standing there, flanking that podium where we will see the president at the Rose Garden. David Chalian and Malika Henderson are with me as we've been talking about what we presume are in sort of the guts of the deal, essentially opening the government for 3 weeks. Can they do a deal? This is precisely what the Democrats have been wanted. Open the government, then let's talk. And if not, might the president, issue some sort of national emergency and get his funding for his wall? All great questions as we wait. David Chalian, my question to you is this. This thing has been dragging on, excruciatingly painful for hundreds of thousands of people in this country. And I know we're hearing from the White House that, this is perhaps the timing was driven by, the mess at the airports in the Northeast. But I have to also... I woke up to the news about Roger Stone as the rest of us did, and I'm just wondering, what do you think is the reason why today is the day?
You mean, is he changing the subject and
yes.
reopening this? I don't know. You and I were talking yesterday before Roger Stone was indicted, Brooke, and I suggested that there were some cracks that I think we were beginning to see.
Yes.
And I think that his deference to Speaker Pelosi on the State of the Union issue shouldn't have been overinterpreted about the shutdown, but it was an indication. Looks like the president now is walking out of the Oval Office.
Here he is. Let's listen.
Thank you very much, my fellow Americans. I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government. As everyone knows, I have a very powerful alternative, but I didn't want to use it at this time. Hopefully it will be unnecessary. I want to thank all of the incredible federal workers and their amazing families who have shown such extraordinary devotion in the face of this recent hardship. You are fantastic people. You are incredible patriots. Many of you have suffered far greater than anyone, but your families would know or understand. And not only did you not complain, but in many cases you encouraged me to keep going because you care so much about our country and about its border security. Again, I thank you. All Americans, I thank you. You are very, very special people. I am so proud that you are citizens of our country. When I say make America great again, it could never be done without you. Great people. In a short while, I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th. I will make sure that all employees receive their back pay very quickly or as soon as possible. It'll happen fast. I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately. After 36 days of spirited debate and dialogue, I have seen and heard from enough Democrats and Republicans that they are willing to put partisanship aside, I think, and put the security of the American people first. I do believe they're going to do that. They have said they are for complete border security, and they have finally and fully acknowledged that having barriers, fencing, or walls, or whatever you want to call it, will be an important part of the solution. A bipartisan conference committee of House and Senate lawmakers and leaders will immediately begin reviewing the requests of our Homeland Security experts, and experts they are, and also law enforcement professionals who have worked with us so closely. We want to thank Border Patrol, ICE, and all law enforcement. Been incredible. Based on operational guidance from the experts in the field, they will put together a Homeland Security package for me to shortly sign into law. Over the next 21 days, I expect that both Democrats and Republicans will operate in good faith. This is an opportunity for all parties to work together for the benefit of our whole beautiful, wonderful nation. If we make a fair deal, the American people will be proud of their government for proving that we can put country before party. We can show all Americans and people all around the world that both political parties are united when it comes to protecting our country and protecting our people. Many disagree, but I really feel that working with Democrats and Republicans, we can make a truly great and secure deal happen for everyone. Walls should not be controversial. Our country has built 654 miles of barrier over the last 15 years, and every career Border Patrol agent I have spoken with has told me that walls work. They do work. No matter where you go, they work. Israel built a wall, 99.9% successful. Won't be any different for us. They keep criminals out. They save good people from attempting a very dangerous journey from other countries, thousands of miles, because they think they have a glimmer of hope of coming through. With a wall, they don't have that hope. They keep drugs out, and they dramatically increase efficiency by allowing us to patrol far larger areas with far fewer people. It's just common sense. Walls work. That's why most of the Democrats in Congress have voted in the past for bills that include walls and physical barriers and very powerful fences. The walls we are building are not medieval walls. They are smart walls designed to meet the needs of frontline border agents and are operationally effective. These barriers are made of steel, have see-through visibility, which is very important, and are equipped with sensors, monitors, and cutting-edge technology, including state-of-the-art drones. We do not need 2,000 miles of concrete wall from sea to shiny sea. We never did. We never proposed that. We never wanted that, because we have barriers at the border where natural structures are as good as anything that we can build. They're already there. They've been there for millions of years. Our proposed structures will be in predetermined high-risk locations that have been specifically identified by the Border Patrol to stop illicit flows of people and drugs. No border security plan can ever work without a physical barrier. Just doesn't happen. At the same time, we need to increase drug detection technology and manpower to modernize our ports of entry, which are obsolete. The equipment's obsolete. They're old. They're tired. This is something we have all come to agree on and will allow for quicker and safer commerce. These critical investments will improve and facilitate legal trade and travel through our lawful ports of entry. Our plan also includes desperately needed humanitarian assistance for those being exploited and abused by coyotes, smugglers, and the dangerous journey north. The requests we have put before Congress are vital to ending the humanitarian and security crisis on our southern border. Absolutely vital. Will not work without it. This crisis threatens the safety of our country and thousands of American lives. Criminal cartels, narco-terrorists, transnational gangs like MS-13, and human traffickers are brazenly violating U.S. laws and terrorizing innocent communities. Human traffickers. The victims are women and children. Maybe to a lesser extent, believe it or not, children. Women are tied up, they're bound, duct tape put around their faces, around their mouths. In many cases, they can't even breathe. They're put in the backs of cars or vans or trucks. They don't go through your port of entry. They make a right turn going very quickly. They go into the desert areas or whatever areas you can look at. And as soon as there's no protection, they make a left or a right into the United States of America. There's nobody to catch them. There's nobody to find them. They can't come through the port, because if they come through the port, people will see 4 women sitting in a van with tape around their face and around their mouth. Can't have that. And that problem, because of the internet, is the biggest problem. It's never been like this before that you can imagine. It's at the worst level, human trafficking, in the history of the world. This is not a United States problem. This is a world problem. But they come through areas where they have no protection, where they have no steel barriers, where they have no walls. And we can stop almost 100% of that. The profits reaped by these murderous organizations are used to fund their malign and destabilizing conduct throughout this hemisphere. Last year alone, ICE officers removed 10,000 known or suspected gang members like MS-13 and members as bad as them. Horrible people, tough, mean, sadistic. In the last 2 years, ICE officers arrested a total of 266,000 criminal aliens inside of the United States, including those charged or convicted of nearly 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 homicides, or as you would call them, violent, vicious killings. Can be stopped. Vast quantities of lethal drugs, including meth, fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine, are smuggled across our southern border and into U.S. schools and communities. Drugs kill much more than 70,000 Americans a year and cost our society in excess of $700 billion. The sheer volume of illegal immigration has overwhelmed federal authorities and stretched our immigration system beyond the breaking point. Nearly 50 migrants a day are being referred for medical assistance. They are very, very sick, making this a health crisis as well. It's a very big health crisis. People have no idea how big it is unless you're there. Our backlog in the immigration courts is now far greater than the 800,000 cases that you've been hearing about over the last couple of years. Think of that, though. 800,000 cases because our laws are obsolete. So obsolete. They're the laughing stock all over the world. Our immigration laws, all over the world, they've been there for a long time, are the laughing stock all over the world. We do not have the necessary space or resources to detain, house, vet, screen, and safely process this tremendous influx of people. In short, we do not have control over who is entering our country, where they come from, who they are, why they are coming. The result for many years is a colossal danger to public safety. We're going to straighten it out. It's not hard. It's easy if given the resources. Last month was the third straight month in a row with 60,000 apprehensions on our southern border. Think of that. We apprehended 60,000 people. That's like a stadium full of people, a big stadium. There are many criminals being apprehended, but vast numbers are coming because our economy is so strong. We have the strongest economy now in the entire world. You see what's happening. We have nowhere left to house them and no way to promptly remove them. We can't get them out because our laws are so obsolete, so antiquated, and so bad. Without new resources from Congress, we will be forced to release these people into communities, something we don't want to do, called catch and release. You catch them. Even if they're criminals, you then release them. And you can't release them from where they came. So they go into our country and end up in places you would least suspect. And we do as little releasing as possible, but they're coming by the hundreds of thousands. I have had 0 Democrat lawmakers volunteer to have them released into their districts or states. And I think they know that, and that's what we're going to be discussing over the next 3 weeks. The painful reality is that the tremendous economic and financial burdens of illegal immigration fall on the shoulders of low-income Americans, including millions of wonderful, patriotic, law-abiding immigrants who enrich our nation. As Commander-in-Chief, my highest priority is the defense of our great country. We cannot surrender operational control over the nation's borders to foreign cartels, traffickers, and smugglers. We want future Americans to come to our country legally and through a system based on merit. We need people to come to our country. We have great companies moving back into the United States. And we have the lowest employment and the best employment numbers that we've ever had. There are more people working today in the United States than have ever worked in our country. We need people to come in to help us on the farms and with all of these great companies that are moving back. Finally, they're moving back. People said it couldn't happen. It's happening. And we want them to enjoy the blessings of safety and liberty and the rule of law. We cannot protect and deliver these blessings without a strong and secure border. I believe that crime in this country can go down by a massive percentage if we have great security on our southern border. I believe drugs, large percentages of which come through the southern border, will be cut by a number that nobody will believe. So let me be very clear. We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall or steel barrier. If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency. We will have great security. And I want to thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
days. 35 days of federal workers rationing asthma medicine for their kids, sleeping in cars, driving Uber, late night shifts just to make ends meet, and this man is not getting a single penny for his wall. 35 days, and the people are applauding him. This man single-handedly shut down the government. It is shameful. Dana Basham, starting with you. I heard no explanation as to why he did this and why he accepted this deal. 35 days later, he still is not getting what he wants.
There's a four-letter word to describe what we just saw, and that's cave. There's no other way to describe it. The president caved after, as you said, more than 30 days, after all of the real world ramifications of what has gone on. He hasn't gotten a dime for his wall. But it's because things have gotten so bad. Obviously, we know that not just from common sense, but from reporting, that he realized he didn't have a choice but to do exactly what Democrats have been asking him to do since day one. You want to have a negotiation, Mr. President? Great, we'll have a negotiation. But let's reopen the government first and then have the negotiation. That is what's happening now. It was exactly what was asked of him by Democrats and some Republicans, to be fair, back when this shutdown began. The one thing I will say that he did say at the very beginning, before he went on with his messaging opportunity, taking advantage of the fact that all of the networks were taking this event live, he did hold out the potential for doing something else. And I have been told by a couple of Republican sources that that is the executive action, perhaps a national emergency, something else that he could do with his own power. Obviously, we talked about it could be and would be challenged in the courts. But my guess is, as he's going to see the coverage, there's no other way to describe it other than a cave, he might be itching to do something that shows that he at least is doing something within his power.
Jim Acosta is our chief White House correspondent. Jim Acosta, what did you think?
Yeah, Brooke, I mean, this was a big cave. I think this is one of the biggest tactical defeats for the president that we've seen in his political life. He created this box canyon for himself. Nancy Pelosi let him walk right into it, and now he's trying desperately to see his way out of it after watching on television this morning the havoc that a government shutdown, a protracted government shutdown, can wreak on the nation's aviation system, with all of those flights being delayed and so forth in the Northeast Corridor. I think that was weighing very heavily on what was happening over here at the White House. But as you heard at the very end of the president's comments there, he said that he is fully capable and prepared to shut down this government again if by February 15th we don't see some sort of agreement to get that wall down on the border with Mexico. Now, Brooke, I will tell you, standing here in the Rose Garden, this was pretty remarkable to watch, because as the president was moving through those prepared remarks, there were moments in which, and I suppose we know this because we've been following this man for some time now, he can't help himself and was going off of those prepared remarks, going off of that teleprompter, and at times ad-libbing about what he sees as a crisis on the border, talking about women having their mouths duct taped at one point, suggesting that if a wall is built on the southern border with Mexico, that the amount of drugs coming in would be cut, as he said, by a number that people don't really have a firm understanding of. And so the president was making some of these claims that he often makes when he talks about immigration, when he talks about the border in unscripted settings, and he was injecting some of those remarks, ad-libbing those remarks as he was reading off of the teleprompter here. So I think that shows you where the president's head is right now. He just can't give up on this wall. He just can't quit this wall. And I think that is why you're going to see, very possibly in the next 3 weeks, this country right back where we have been for the last 35 days, which is perhaps in the middle of a government shutdown because the president can't seem to get his way on the wall. Now, the other thing that was interesting to watch, being here in the Rose Garden, is off on the sidelines underneath the colonnade. Over here, leading into the West Wing, you can see the vice president, you can see Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, cabinet officials, other top officials applauding as if this was some sort of victorious moment.
Celebration.
For the president. Yeah, celebration. That was just right out of Alice in Wonderland, Brooke.
Totally.
I mean, to see the White House and people inside the White House applauding the president during one of the biggest tactical defeats, strategic defeats of his political career, to me, just felt like the upside down out of Stranger Things. It is just bizarre to see something like that happen. And they were looking jubilant before he even began his remarks. They were smiling and clapping and laughing and that sort of thing. And it goes to and this is something that we see day in and day out over here at the White House. There are just people here who are not dealing with reality. The reality on the outside world is that during a 35-day shutdown, people are suffering, they're crying, they're on the news talking about how they can't pay their bills and buy their insulin. And over here at the White House, they're smiling and clapping and congratulating themselves for a shutdown that just caused a great deal of agony across the country. And it was striking near the beginning of the president's remarks when he said, and he made this claim that there are government employees who have been getting through this just fine. He suggested that government employees are getting through this just fine. That just suggests that he's not looking at the real, when he looks outside the window of the Oval Office, he's not looking at the real world. And so that is why, if folks are wondering at home, could we be here in the exact same place 3 weeks from now? I think that's probably not a bad bet to make at this point. This president is hell-bent on getting a wall. And my sense of it is he'll sign this CR to get the government open again, but we might be right back in the same place 3 weeks from now, Brooke.
He can't quit the wall, so says Jim Acosta. Jim in the Rose Garden. Jim, thank you. You know, it is this sort of upside down world, David Chalian. But how do all these federal workers and the rest of us get right side up? I mean, obviously we've been pointing out this is a deal he could have had 35 days ago. Like, you could have cut and copied the speech that we just heard and posted it back to December 22nd. So what now?
Which is why, as Dana was saying earlier, right, this is everything the Democrats asked for, and as she said, some Republicans. But we also have to remember, this is actually everything that all the Republicans and Democrats and President Trump agreed to before Christmas, before he completely reversed course. That's what this is. Extending funding for a limited period of time so that the debate over border security in the long run could be dealt with. That's actually what Mike Pence went and agreed with Mitch McConnell was the deal. And so it begs the question, how is this not all for naught? The entire 35-day period was completely for naught. And it is, so when the president says in his remarks in the Rose Garden today that this is going to provide an opportunity to have that debate, you just have to scratch your head and be like, that opportunity existed on December 22nd, and he was for it until he completely then rejected it. It just defies logic at all.
Totally.
Which is why I think Jim is right to note how devastating of a political defeat is. And one can only hope that some of those smiles and applause from the staff is because they understand how crushingly bad this government shutdown was, and they perhaps some of the smiles and applause are just because of the mere fact that the government will reopen and the pain will stop.
But for these federal workers, again, like that's what I always kind of come back to. And Carrie Cordero, I mean, of course, there are the ramifications of safety, and we've been talking to TSA folks and ATC folks. But you know, and I know that a lot of these people will get paid back. But are there long-term effects to this for these workers?
There absolutely are, Brooke. You know, I spent 13 years in government, and you can't just turn government on and off again, especially in the national security and homeland security space. There's investigations that are ongoing. There's work that's being done, intelligence being collected, sources that are being worked, all sorts of things that are taking place that you can't just turn it on and off. The other thing is there's a lot of mid-career folks in government who are going to think about leaving federal service. There's young people who are thinking about, well, maybe I won't go into federal service because it's just so, it used to be more stable, and now it's something that's unpredictable. So there's just so many aspects